All right, we are, 1 second, let me broadcast. We are broadcasting and we are recording.
As president of the Carbondale Library, I will put on the record that it's inconvenient for us to have an in-person meeting because of COVID, and we're meeting pursuant to the authority granted by the governor's recent declarations. With that said, Roland, would you call the roll?
Barbara,
Here.
Susan,
Here.
me, here, Julian,
Here.
Bill,
Here.
Joyce,
Here.
Chastity,
Here.
Don,
Here.
Harriet.
Here.
We have a quorum. Do we show anyone who's visiting us today, Diana?
No, there are no visitors.
Okay. I have nothing to report for heads of government. You did attend the heads of government meeting. Do you wish to say anything about that at this time, Diana?
We did not have one this month, so. So no, nothing about that.
You had a chance to review the minutes that were circulated.
I have a couple of things. I did not preside at that meeting. Isn't that correct? You have Barbara Levin president.
Oh, okay, let me correct that.
I thought you did a good job though, Barbara.
My appearance changed a little bit, but
Yeah.
Are there any
Okay.
other corrections to be noted?
yes, I think under the librarian's report, number 2, just a matter of correcting the sentence a little bit. The sentence that begins motion from Philip Brown made a motion. I think
Okay.
just Philip Brown made a motion.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else?
Anything else?
Good thing I haven't signed them.
Exactly. You're gonna have a lot, your hand's gonna get sore when we're finally in person.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes as corrected?
I move so.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. The minutes be approved as corrected. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, excuse me, call the roll.
Barbara,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
me, yes, Julian,
Yes.
Philip,
Yes.
Joyce,
Yes.
Chastity,
Yes.
Don,
Yes.
Harriet.
Yes.
Do we have any correspondence or communications?
No correspondence or communications.
You have financial reports, both bills and a financial report. Does anyone have any questions about the bills payable?
I want to add one bill payable. $5,000 needs to be sent to Hoopla to increase the amount of collections that we have available to us to use for the Hoopla, and that has already been paid to us by the Friends of the Carbondale Public Library.
Just curious, there's a $250 listing to Teresa Italis.
That's
Yeah.
the new social worker intern supervisor.
Oh,
She replaced Connie Baker.
Do we have a motion to approve the bills as circulated with the addition?
I'll move that we pay the bills. I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to pay the bills. Any discussion?
Hey, Diana, I'm just curious, are we spending more money on Hoopla?
Yeah.
A lot more?
Yeah. Probably about $7,200 more per year. because we increased it to 10 items from
Oh.
6. And we've had a lot of people using it. It might not end up being quite as much as that. You know, I think we might have had a little bit more use, and now that we're open, maybe a little bit less. But the Friends went ahead and put in 5,000 for that. So, and people seem very happy that it was increased. We're not out of money in our Hoopla account right now, but we did need to supplement it so that next year we don't get have to put a whole lot in order to keep meeting demand. So.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
If there are no other questions, please call the roll.
Barbara,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
me, yes. Julian,
Yes.
Phil,
Yes.
Joyce,
Yes.
Chastity,
Yes.
Don,
Yes.
Harriet.
Yes.
Any questions about the financial report?
I want to just make a comment about the financial report and the bills. I took everything off of, at Gwen's suggestion, I took everything off of Gwen's desk and boxed it up. And she's been set up to be able to work from home for quite a while. So she put together, you know, all the bill pay and the financial report while she was sick. She drove here and I put a box on the curb and went inside, and she got out and picked it up. So she deserves a crown with lots of jewels in it, and applause, please. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm sure that it wasn't easy to do when you're not feeling well, and you especially are feeling exhausted. It's hard to even think when you're feeling exhausted, and she put it together. So it's really greatly appreciated, and I'm very impressed with her.
Well, thank you. I'm glad we got through this not too badly.
Yeah, me too. And yeah, thank you, Gwen.
It would just be important for you to continue to improve though, Gwen, because we can't afford to operate without you. So
Yeah, I'm definitely taking it easy.
Good.
good deal.
Yeah, she's
Is there
very,
a
very
motion to
necessary.
approve the financial report? Anyone?
What was the question?
Is there a motion to approve the financial report?
I move that we approve the financial report.
Second,
Who was the second?
aye.
I seconded it before. Is that the same?
Harriet? Okay, I'll put Harriet.
Call the roll.
Barbara,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
me, yes. Julian,
Yes.
Phil,
Yes.
Joyce,
Yes.
Chastity,
Yes.
Don,
Yes.
Harriet.
Yes.
I think that brings us to your report, Diana.
Actually, there's
No, there's,
Budget.
yeah,
I'm sorry,
budget.
budget first.
Yeah,
Levy.
budget amendment and levy. And Gwen, if you want to stay, you can. If you want to go take a nap, you're welcome to do so as well. So the FY21 budget amendment and preliminary budget were included in your packet, and the levy letter to the mayor, which is here at the library. Don, if you want to come by and sign it sometime, it's at the circulation desk. I was very pleased to find that after running numbers for weeks, that we are going to get through this very strange fiscal year without a really negative impact, even though we've not taken in fines for several months, and fines that we're taking in fines again now that we're open, but we've had to waive a lot because of people's confusion about whether or not we were open. Interestingly, we did have a lot of, we're not down on non-resident fees. People have paid their non-resident fees so they can get access to Hoopla. But we've had unexpected expenditures in association with COVID. But we do budget always to have unexpected expenditures. And largely our saving grace is that we were going to do a project, a grant funded project, the roof and youth room. And because we did not get that grant, and yet we budgeted to meet our 50-50 match, we're in good shape. And that was all budgeted within general revenue, not specifically within the building. So that will help us get through this fiscal year and to even have some money left at the end of the year, as we always try to do. And then the following fiscal year, we are able to meet the minimum wage increase, and to keep everybody from piling up on top of one another. So all staff get at least a 2% increase in order to keep them keep long-term employees and higher level employees from falling down underneath shelvers and part-timers and circulation clerks who don't have additional paraprofessional duties. And we can do that without raising our levy, which is up to you. You can certainly tell me to increase expenditures in any line item that you wish me to do so, and increase that levy. Normally, I would recommend a $15,000. I was anticipating needing a $15,000 increase, and would normally recommend increasing by small increments rather than ending up in a situation where you need to jump forward. But I have budgeted through 2025 for employee expenses to meet that minimum wage increases. And I believe that next year we're not going to have to make some enormous leap in order to meet that expense. This budget that I created, the budget amendment I created, actually allows us to replace the brush roof, which just needs to be, it's not in terrible shape, but it needs to be done so that it doesn't happen in the same year that we end up needing to replace the roof above us. So I'm pleased with it. I think we're in good shape, and I think that we can pull it off without having to do a levy increase in a year when our local businesses have not been able to turn a profit and are really at great risk of hardly being able to stay open. And when our individual people, a lot of them are probably facing employment issues and so forth because of COVID. So that is up to you, but that is why I wrote that budget and levy the way that I did.
We're still reapplying for the grant.
We will reapply in the future, at least to do the roof. So the room was a smaller portion of it, but yeah, we will reapply to do the roof. And honestly, if we ended up in a situation where we suddenly had to do the roof without the grant funding, there's some money in the building fund. You don't want to spend that down and then not have it for other emergencies and other things, but it is there. So if we did run into an emergency, it's not, if there's nothing in the budget that I've created here that is that I expect to put us in an emergency situation in the future.
What is the impact of the minimum wage on staffing, personnel fees?
So in the coming fiscal year, the impact is including all salaries and wages. It's about $40,000. It changes from year to year depending on various factors. And of course, you don't know for sure ever what your IMRF rate is going to be or what your insurance costs are going to be. Those can go up a little bit incrementally. Fortunately, this year, the change from calendar year 2020 to calendar year 2021 is not impacting us in terms of insurance costs. Our insurance consortium switched providers in order to keep those costs from going up. So they're switching from Blue Cross to Aetna. And so there will be no change in that cost. There is a little bit further discussion about that when we get down to the librarian's report. There's a little bit of decision making to be made in terms of what to offer, but no changes in cost.
I had a question about property taxes, Diana. Maybe this may come up later, but I got an assessment, and I think a lot of other people did, a letter about assessment going down a little bit. So next year, I'll pay a little bit less taxes, lower taxes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the proportion of Carbondale that's going to pay more and the proportion that's going to pay less, but there is a lot of assessment so I don't know, and I can't tell what the sum of it will be for you, what the end result, whether you'll end up getting a little bit less than you've been getting from property taxes.
That can certainly happen. I think in the past fiscal year, we were about 9,000 under what we had levied. In the time that I've been here, I think we've gotten more than we levied only once. But it's usually somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000 less than we levy. It really, that's a complicated thing to calculate, but we levy a specific amount of money. So if we were a library district and we were going to levy a certain percentage, I believe, if we were a district, then, or if we were in a tax capped county that was not within a home rule community, then that kind of thing could really affect us.
I see.
But really your property going up and down, that just means that at the county level, they have to recalculate, which they do every year, have to recalculate. So this comes up when we talk about large pieces of property that are being assessed for $100,000 less or more than what they previously were assessed at. And so they
need
have
a slight
to apply.
change. A slight change.
Slight changes don't really affect us. Even those large changes don't affect the library because, again, we'll still get what we levied more or less. But if it just means that a larger piece of the pie will get distributed to the homeowners because those businesses don't want to pay their taxes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's always a business. It's never a homeowner that has that much of a reduction. So that, again, it doesn't affect the library as an institution. It affects the taxpayers in Carbondale when businesses do that. And a lot of times sometimes it's local businesses with a legitimate concern. Often it's major corporations like Walgreens likes to do that as a matter of policy on an almost annual basis. To try and get out of paying their share.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What's your pleasure? Do you want to have a motion to approve the budget and levy and then modify it if anyone wants, or how do you want to handle this?
I guess procedurally, you usually will do a motion. It is listed separately as the amended budget for FY21 and then the budget and levy for FY22. I imagine you can go ahead and do the amended budget for FY21 because I can't imagine that you're going to, dispute that. It's just the reality. It's just the numbers. So If you want to go ahead and do that one with
Yeah,
a
why don't we start
motion.
with that, then we'll move on to FY '22.
Okay,
Is there a motion to approve the amended budget for FY '21?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded. Any discussion? Roll call.
Barbara,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
me, yes. Julian,
Yes.
Phil,
Yes.
Joyce,
Yes.
Chastity,
yes,
Don,
Yes.
Harriet,
Yes.
Why don't we start with a motion to approve the proposed budget for FY '22? And after we've had a second, if there's any amendments that are net requested, we'll deal with that.
that would be
I will
budget and
move.
levy.
Pardon?
That would be budget and levy.
Budget and levy, thank you.
I will move that approval.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Are we ready for the question? Please call the roll.
Barbara,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
me, yes. Julian,
Yes.
Philip,
Yes.
Joyce,
Yes.
Chastity,
Yes,
Don,
Yes.
Harriet.
Yes.
thank you.
Does that take us to your report now, Diana?
Yes, it does. So building and grounds maintenance, not a whole lot has happened here. Just some regular maintenance, done a little bit more of painting inside and stuff. So it's looking nice. The next thing on my list is some further deliberation on whether to close the library on Election Day and associated staff leave policy. I put a policy in your packet for you to take a look at, and I do just have an update to give us some perspective on this, just in case it changes anything. You may want to discuss this. Initially, when we had decided that we would be open, the state library had told libraries that it was a local decision. And since then, usually when we have a legal issue, we would go to Phil Lenzini, because he's a library expert on library law. He advised libraries that we ought to be closed in order to remain in compliance with the governor's orders. And so the state library came back after libraries started to buzz about that and said, we suggest that you all seek your own legal counsel. So I know what Phil Lenzini thinks. He thinks we should be closed. Don Prosser is a lawyer on our board. I know that he would prefer that we be open. We've been closed an awful lot. I did reach out to Jamie at the city as the city's attorney, and I did not hear back, so I don't have a tiebreaker. I don't know that there are really very likely to be any consequences to remaining open. If you do decide to remain open, I did formalize a policy for how we would proceed with that, and that is in your packet. It basically just states what we had decided upon or what you had decided upon at your last board meeting. If you prefer, I can also change this policy, of course, if you want to do something along the lines of asking staff, for example, to either only be paid the difference between what they're paid for being an election judge, or to hand over what they're paid for being an election judge if they choose not to take a vacation day. That's something that is actually in our policies when it comes to jury duty. So that there's no double dipping with that. That is entirely up to you. What they get paid to be an election judge from 5 a.m. to 7 p.m. Is really, really minimal. I think it comes out to maybe $11 an hour. Gwen, do you know?
I was paid $150 total. That also included a training fee. They didn't really separate it out. I think it was $30 for the training, and then the rest was for election day. And I was there till 9:30 p.m.
Yeah.
It's a long day.
Right.
Do you have any indication that anybody will be an election judge?
Gwen will be.
I will be.
And Jennifer, I believe, is going to be as well. So I've got 2 people who will. So, I mean, I kind of, you know, just as a library director, I'm not super inclined to take that $150 from them. And if we do that, they probably would end up taking a vacation day instead of just taking the day off. I just feel like in the spirit of the governor saying that we're supposed to be closed in order to sort of encourage voting, that in the spirit of that, I just want to make sure that we are encouraging our staff, or at least not putting up any obstacles to our staff being a part of the voting process by serving in that way.
I move we adopt the policy that we and you have proposed.
Is there a second?
I'll second that. I think that's a good idea.
Well, I think, and I will speak now, I think it's premature to adopt this policy until we decide if we're going to be open. I don't think we need to be dealing with paying people if we're not going to be open. While I personally think the governor's way out of line and should not be directing us to be closed, I think the board needs to decide that issue first. So I'm against this motion at this time, since I think we need to decide first if the building's going to be open before we deal with compensation.
I thought the policy implied that we would be open, otherwise we wouldn't have to worry about it.
Well, if we do not stay open, why are we talking about paying anybody?
We wouldn't.
They're just off. So that's my point. I think that the governor has apparently, according to Mr. Lanzetti, has something to say about whether or not we should be open. I honestly do not agree with that analysis, but that's up to the board to decide first, I think, before we decide payment.
May I withdraw my motion then and move that we stay open?
If your second will agree.
I'll
You
second
agree
that.
So the motion is now before you to open on election day. Is there a second?
I keep seconding it.
Harriet has seconded it. Any other discussion about this?
Well, I did want to say that anybody who's going to be an election judge should have the training. Gwen said she did, but I just wanted to be sure that anybody who signed up to be an election judge did have the training.
I received another letter. You have to perform it, I think, within a year. I had one before I did the primary, and then they sent me a letter that gave me an option to do an in-person one or a web one. So I have to do another one before the election.
You have to be trained according to I mean, you can't just show up.
Yeah, this is only my second one, but I think that you're required to take a training every 6 months or before every election.
Every 2 years.
Okay, but yeah, I'm not sure because I had one before the primary and then they requested that I do another one.
We could get to that in a minute. Right now, the motion before us is whether or not we're going to be open. Motion is to have the building open. Any further discussion?
Diana, do you know if the other public libraries in the area are going to be closed or open? Marion?
I think that it's a mixed bag. I'm not sure about our neighboring libraries, whether they're going to open or close, but just from discussion on the listserv, it was kind of a mixed bag. I think a lot of them will probably close, like smaller libraries in particular. they tend to do what Phil says. And they're like, oh, I could use a day off. So, but I don't think I could use a day off is really like the guiding factor in whether or not you're there to provide services to the public.
I mean, the university will be closed.
So
If you're ready for the question, we'll have the roll call.
Barbara,
Yes.
Susan,
Can you restate what the question is that we're
Motion is
voting?
for the library to be open on election day.
So okay, I'm going to vote no.
Roland, yes. Julian,
Yes.
Bill,
No,
Joyce,
No.
Chastity,
No.
Don,
Yes.
Harriet,
Yes.
What is our total here, Roland?
I wasn't keeping track.
I was trying and I got 4 yays and 3 nays.
That's what I thought too, but I
So
wanted to be sure.
that's
that
only
was right.
7. And so there are 9 of you. So I'm missing 2.
Yeah, can we vote again? Why don't we just call the roll again? This time Roland will write it down so it'll be absolutely correct.
Thank you.
Barbara,
Yes.
Susan,
No.
Roland, yes. Julian,
Yes.
Philip,
no,
Joyce,
No.
Chastity,
No.
Don,
Yes.
Harriet.
Yes.
So
5
it's
and
5 to 4.
Still 5-4.
that's what I got.
Motion carries. Now we need to deal with the issue about compensation.
Actually, that motion doesn't carry because I got 5 no's and 4 yeses.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was the other way around.
I
The
did
other
too.
way-
Edith,
The
so
other
we
way
are
around.
closed. That'll end that discussion.
Okay.
No,
Very good.
it was the other way around.
I
It
had
was?
5.
5 yays and 4 nays.
Right.
I'll tell you what, if you were a nay, please hold your hand up in the air so I can see it. 1, 2, 3, 4 nays. Okay, you're correct. It was 5 yeses. Okay.
That's the closest vote we've
Not
had.
often we have a disagreement about anything here, but that's now that there's the majority, this overwhelming landslide vote of 5 to 4 has decided that we will be open. The next question is, as recommended by the librarian, the policy on payment, which is consistent with what we had talked about in our previous meeting. Is there a motion to approve that?
Yes.
Second,
I'll second it.
discussion. Roll
Yeah,
call.
but no. Well, there's discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
Yeah, it still bothers me a little bit that they're, I mean, the issue of double dipping, and it's not that I don't applaud their involvement in working at the polls, but I guess I don't want the people who are working at the library, which is one of the reasons I thought it should be closed, to have any resentment about that double dipping, that they have to be there in order to get paid while their coworkers do not, and in fact are getting compensated in addition to their normal draw as if they were there. So that bothers me a little bit. So I don't know what the resolution is. Hearing the policy regarding jury duty, it seems to be to me that is a fairly good parallel for the situation, and so I would favor that if we're going to do this, that they turn their money into the library or take the day off, however they want to choose to do it. So my 2 cents.
Anyone else?
Well, I think that it would create some negative attitude on the ones who are going to go and work, and then we are going to go and confiscate their pay. I just assume we do one or the other, let them keep the money, or, they can take a vacation day, but I don't want to take their money.
No, well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
They do one or the other. They don't.
Well, the problem with this, I think, is if we have a staff member who is not on salary, they're hourly as assigned. And I think when we talked about this before, Diana was saying that she would treat someone who was an hourly employee as if the work was assigned to that employee. Is that what you said, Diana?
No, I mean, usually when we have things with hourly employees, like say we have a snow day, if they were assigned to work 4 hours, they would be paid for 4 hours. So I guess I can see a situation where if you are taking $150 from someone who was going to work just 3 or 4 hours that day, it's a bit unfair to them. Like, so if, let's say you have a full-timer who was gonna work 7.5 hours and they make $15 an hour, they, even as a full-timer, they were gonna make $112. A part-timer, let's say we got a part-timer who is gonna just work 4 hours, and they make $11, they were only gonna make $44 that day. So now they're handing us $150 so they can make $44. They would probably just elect to take the day off. There's the fact that Gwen, for example, got compensated for, part of her compensation, at least $30 of it was from training that happened on a day when we were not closed. So she shouldn't really have to give us that training money.
Well, did Gwen take the day off last time? Well,
Yes, I took a vacation day on the primary day, and then the training occurred at night, so it didn't really factor into my work.
Mm-hmm.
so I kind of feel like that's the way we should handle it. You take a day off in order to go, which, there's certainly no opposition to that. We support their involvement.
Well, I feel like what, your suspicion of where the resentment lies, Phil, versus where Julian's suspicion of where the resentment lies. Knowing the staff, I feel like I'm more in agreement with where Julian thinks that resentment would lie. Where if you were a poll worker, having to turn that money over that you earned.
I'm not saying that. That would be the decision of whoever is working the poll. They could choose to take either a day off at the library or to turn in their election pay.
Can we make it simple and just say, if you want to work the polls, you take a day off?
That's exactly what I'm saying. We're in agreement. You and I are in agreement.
I mean, we can do that. It's just the only reason this came up was that the governor suggested that or put in a policy saying that we needed to be closed in order to encourage voting and or participation in democracy. We'll say if we'll expand it to that. So so this is really just an attempt to encourage library staff to participate fully in democracy by being poll workers.
But we're not, his suggestion was to be closed. So we voted not to be closed. So I think in order to honor the spirit of what he's asking us to do, then we have to find a solution that is equitable to all.
So when you take a day off, you mean like a full-timer, they'd be taking one of their vacation days? And then a part-timer, they would just kind of do that ahead of time with you, like, I need this day off, so don't schedule me this.
Right, and they just not be paid, right? Mhm.
It just seems punitive either way we do it. So like, you know, they
Well,
either
maybe-
give away their money or they give away vacation, which like some people,
Maybe,
you know,
maybe
don't want to
don't.
have to take a
Yeah,
Go
maybe.
on,
vacation.
Chastity. Chastity, can you finish the thought?
I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying, like, you know, some people, I don't think that you should have to take vacation to participate in the election. Like, that's why I voted no. I think it's a good idea that you try to get everybody to participate in the election process. Like, you know, think about like a Wendy's worker. If Wendy's is open, they can't just tell their boss, hey, I need to take a little bit of time off. You know, not all jobs are like that. So, I mean, that's why I said no. I think that if we have the opportunity to be able to be closed, we should, because just to allow people to participate in the process. And either way we go, it feels punitive to me.
I agree that we should participate. In a way, it's kind of anachronistic that we're having this discussion now that people can vote so easily by mail or early voting. And I mean, one way or another, you probably could get your vote in. There were already lots, you know, but and that will probably continue, I think, to have the early. We just didn't have that before. It wasn't as viable or obvious to people. It used to be.
Yeah,
that
but I think the
places
issue,
were closed.
Harriet, is not the matter of the franchise of voting, because as you said, there are many ways for people in Illinois to vote, not on November 3rd. But we do need poll workers on November 3rd.
That's
And
right.
And the governor is, part of his rationale in closing, in addition to promoting voting, I think, was to also make it easy for county authorities to get poll workers. My vote, honestly, in response to the things that were said here, is that I think we have a duty to the public that we haven't been able to deliver because of the COVID thing. And for that reason, that's why I voted in favor of being open, notwithstanding the fact that I appreciate Gwen and anybody else that wants to serve as
Right.
a poll worker. My wife is going to do this, even though she and I will both be voting before the election of November 3rd. But having said that, I think part of the problem I have with this is, I think Phil's point is that we are paying people money as if they're working when they're not, and that's sort of the problem. It's your turn, Phil.
Yeah, perhaps we could solve this by just, if it didn't cost them a vacation day, but they did not get paid for the day, that would seem to solve the problem to me.
So in a sense, it didn't cost them a vacation. They didn't cost them a
They
vacation
get the day off in order to work the polls, but they are not getting paid for their day off, and it's not coming off of their sick day or their vacation days.
Well, then they're docked. You just docked them a day's pay for
Well,
working the polls.
well, if they're not going to get paid, then then they get docked for that day.
That's extremely punitive.
Anyone that has accrued vacation days can take the day if they choose to, as Gwen had done before. But the real question is it fair for somebody who doesn't have any vacation days because they're only hired as an hourly worker, how we need to deal with them? That's the real problem. We can treat everyone in Gwen's situation the same and be fair to her and everyone else. It may be less attractive as somebody would favor, but it could still be fair. But the problem we have is hourly workers who don't have any accrued vacation days. Am I not right, Diana?
Yeah, I mean, I think that does come into play where there's some lack of equity. But of course, there's always a lack of equity in that part-time workers never get paid for not working.
But Diana, the library is open 7 days a week. You know, I mean, you could schedule them that in such a fashion that they don't lose any hours.
Well, yeah, I mean, so then you have to work Saturday after you spent Monday or Tuesday at the polls from 5 to 9. I mean, yeah, you can always make up a day off. That's always scheduled, actually. I mean, if somebody is like, well, I had to take a sick day, but I don't want to take a sick day, can I just work Saturday? I would always say yes to that. But yeah, so then that just
But
gives
it
them a super
doesn't have
long
to be
week.
scheduled that week. I mean, they make it up,
Yeah.
you know, in the weeks following.
Yeah, I think that's
So,
punitive as well, to say you have to work an
well,
extra day at the library because you were a poll worker. I mean, I honestly think the issue at the table, as I see it, is that either we're open, and if you want to be a poll worker, you're on your own. You can either take a vacation day, or if you're a part-timer, you can just not be paid. And we are just doing nothing to encourage you to be a poll worker other than allowing you to do so. Or we can encourage you to be a poll worker by allowing you to, in essence, get a vacation day on election day, so that you can leave and go be a poll worker. And we don't care that you made money as a poll worker. We're just allowing you we're like essentially giving you a vacation day that day. I think those are the kind of the two things, as I see it, the two options. Everything else I've heard suggested is punitive, and we're trying to do the opposite. We're trying to encourage democracy and encourage that participation. And if somebody wants to get up and get themselves to a poll by 5 a.m. And stay there until 9 p.m. and do an extensive training that goes until 9 p.m. prior to that, and they make $150, that we're not going to take their $150 from them. That's my thought. Roland?
It doesn't resolve the problem, though.
Sorry, but I mentioned
Oh,
to Don earlier
I'm
that I
sorry.
have to leave.
Sorry. Go.
Just mentioning that I have to leave.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Roland.
Understood. Thank you, Roland.
Do we
Any further
consider it all?
discussion? The motion on the floor is to approve the draft of the librarian, which would allow people to be off and paid. That's what it amounts to. Is there any further discussion about this?
Barbara, were you going to say something?
Well, do we take into account the fact that with this pandemic, there have been a number of days that our workers have been able to stay at home, and while they are not specifically vacation days, but this is a unique situation where we've been closed so much, as Don says, and we need to be open for the public. That do we consider the fact that our workers have had some time of their own? I'm sure they've worked very hard and we've appreciated everything they've done, but we have had, or they have had, some benefits from the pandemic and in their work hours, let's say. Or is that even worth considering?
I would say that, so for employees who can work at home, they've worked harder than ever. And the two employees that are specific in this, which isn't normally how you set a policy, but the two employees who are specific to this did do a lot of work from home. I mean, Gwen just did this, work for this board meeting while she's very, very sick. So rather than just being sick and taking it as sick time. The other one, Jennifer, is, who does our adult programs also, did quite a bit of work while we were closed. So, our professional staff does a lot at home when we're closed. But I do understand the concern. I understand what you're saying. I understand what everybody's saying. We're just trying to kind of come to a conclusion.
That's why I think it's simpler to be closed for the day. That resolves everything.
But we've been closed an awful lot.
That notwithstanding, I understand that, but I think that perhaps is less a concern than any inequity that this situation presents.
and if you closed, they're getting paid.
Yep.
They're all getting paid for not working.
Pardon?
That is part of the issue.
Except the hourly people, right?
No, they get paid.
Oh, they get paid, okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
so that doesn't resolve.
If they were
Okay.
scheduled, they would get paid. If you were scheduled to work on a Tuesday, normally you're paid if the holiday falls on a Tuesday.
What have we done for all the other elections? Have we closed for all the other elections? I don't
No.
remember that we're closing.
And staff do, by Illinois law, have to be allowed to go and vote on the clock.
Yeah.
And and that is,
but that's the
so
reason
really
why
that
this
first
doesn't have anything
paragraph
to
is
do with the
normal.
vote, because
Right.
under Illinois law, not everybody that I see in front of me is still working, but those that are, you can tell your employer, I want to go vote. And that means that you can't be docked for the time you're off, even if it
That's
takes
right.
you several hours to vote. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a separate job, starting
Right,
before
right.
the work day and continuing beyond the work day of our business. And as was pointed out, even though this is not a lot of money being paid poll workers, they're getting paid more for that day than they would if they were working, for most of them at least, as staff members for the library. So I think we have a motion on the floor. There's been a second. We need to vote on it. And depending upon what we do, we either will resolve it or we'll have more discussion. But the motion is to adopt the resolution as drafted by the librarian, which would allow for payment for anyone who's on staff who asked to be off for the purpose of being a poll watcher. Is there any discussion about that before we go vote? If not, I will call the roll. Barbara, how do you vote?
Yes.
To pay, you're to pay it,
Yeah.
yes. Susan, how do you vote? Susan?
Yeah, yes.
Roland's gone. Julian,
Yes,
Phil,
No,
Chastity,
Oh, yes.
I vote no. Harriet, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries. So we're back to what we decided a few weeks ago without any changes. All is done with that issue. And now we're moving on to what we've been waiting for the whole meeting, which is our homework. How do we want to start this, Diana?
Well, okay, actually, first you have your revision of insurance policy for personnel consideration. This should be an easy one. So we already offer part-timers who work 20 hours a week life insurance, because we were told last year that we had to do that. So from Limerick, which is our consortium. So we already pay a small admin fee, which is just under $10 for each of them per month. This is only affecting maybe 2 employees at a time, maybe 3. So since we already pay that admin fee, we have also the option to allow them at no additional cost to us to opt in to pay their own dental and vision insurance if they want to pay for dental and vision insurance, just like our full-timers do. They pay if they want dental and vision, they pay for dental and vision. So it's no expense to us. It's just a matter of getting official word on whether or not it's okay for us to say that they can buy dental and vision insurance through the library at no additional expense to the library.
Do I understand your explanation that this would give them a potential benefit if they want to buy it, but won't require them to do it, and it will not incur any additional expense to the library?
That's correct.
Can there be any reason for us not to do this?
I don't think
I
so.
so move.
Okay.
Is there a motion to approve that?
I
Oh,
move we approve that.
Is there a second?
I have a second.
Any discussion? Barbara, how do you vote?
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Roland absent. Julian,
yes,
Phil,
yes.
Joyce,
Yes.
Chastity.
Yes.
I vote yes. Harriet,
Yes.
the motion is unanimously carried.
Good.
That's much easier.
Were there some little edited adjustments in that insurance?
The only adjustment in the insurance now is if this answers your question, from 2020 to 2021, there will be no change in price. The only change, other than coming from Aetna instead of Blue Cross, is that.
No, I'm talking about the copy. I see some things lined out here, and
oh, any difference that you see, yeah, in the budget that you're looking at? Is that what you know?
under benefits,
Under benefits. Oh, okay. So yeah, the benefits policy was just updated basically. So just to reflect reality. So
yeah, I just want to make sure we didn't need to approve that, because
I guess you do need to approve this
not
policy.
mentioned in the motion.
You're right. Yeah, it wasn't mentioned in the motion, so we can do a separate motion. Thank you for bringing that up, because yeah, all this really does is just bring you up to reality based on what Limerick offers, and they insist upon what they offer as well. So, like for example, we couldn't decide to offer full-timers insurance after 6 months instead of upon hire. Like things like that. We can't change certain rules. So the rules that as written here are just basically reflecting reality as it has evolved over time.
Okay. I move that we adopt the changes as presented in the document before us in the insurance benefits policy.
I second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? I'll go in reverse order. Harriet, how do you vote?
I'll go yes.
I vote yes. Chastity, how do you vote?
Yes.
Joyce,
Yes.
Phil,
Yes.
Julian,
Yes.
Roland is absent. Susan,
Yes.
Barbara,
Yes.
motion carries. Now we can move on to what I've been waiting for all meeting.
This wonderful discussion. So I can share the chapters on the screen if that's helpful. Does anybody want me to do that?
Well, why don't we do them one at a time? The first one is what, building maintenance? Is that right?
Yeah.
Right.
Any comments about that we want to bring to anybody's attention or concern?
Well, I think you guys do a phenomenal job because you have a full-time person. So keep doing it.
Okay.
I think I could say that about all the chapters, but any other discussion about the first chapter, chapter 5? Chapter 6?
I did have a question on 6. Do you do fire and tornado? Do you do drills on occasion?
We have
The
not
answer can be
done.
no.
Right, we have not. I mean, other than I can say we've done tornado drills just because we've had tornadoes.
You know. Okay.
So, right. But no, actually, we haven't done fire drills, but we do have our system checked. All those systems are checked automatically by contractors, but we haven't had this. We haven't had the staff do a fire drill. I mean,
we haven't had a warning, and you heard the warning go off and whatever. Where do they go? The hospital? Where do they go?
Do we have a tornado shelter?
That's got to be the closest place. It would seem to me would be the hospital.
So we have tornado spaces. There are 2 spaces that you can go to. Yeah. So you can either go into the back hallway which is the staff entrance, or you can go into the restrooms and that area between the restrooms, like where the water fountains are. Then that has no exposure to exterior glass. The fire, that is probably something that we should talk about, is if we had a fire, where would the staff move to, so that the staff and the public, so that we were out of the way.
The only other thing I would say about that is, and I mean, you're a small enough staff that you probably already know this. I mean, we have designated meeting spots, so whoever is responsible for that meeting spot can sort of take attendance to make sure everybody's out of the building.
Okay, so we need a designated meeting spot and designated attendance takers.
Yeah, I think at any time, there would have to be somebody who would be, regardless of what time of the day it might occur, somebody would be responsible for directing the public to the appropriate place as
Right.
well.
Yeah.
Do we have procedures in place for turning off water or gas or electricity to the building if that becomes necessary?
Well, if it's a case of a fire, then you would just need to get out.
I'm thinking earthquake.
Earthquake. We have a disaster plan. You can see it from here. So I would kind of have to look it up and see. But yeah, in the case of earthquake, there would be, that's true. So maybe we need to just have the staff review that. And so we need a staff review.
Gas supply would be one of the
Uh-huh.
main ones to take care of immediately, and after that, probably water.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. It's good they make us do these things.
Any other comments about 6? Chapter 7.
Which is the collections chapter?
Seven.
That's 7.
This one.
7? I was just curious. It says that they advise 8 to 12% of your revenue to be spent on collections. Is that what we spend? I don't know. What do we spend?
So we have a policy on collections that says that while 12% is recommended, we spend 20% on collections and direct services to the public. So direct services also would include things like the computers that the public uses, the share database, so when you count in everything that could be considered direct services, it does get to 20%. If you just look at collections only, which is 2 line items, let me look at that real quick. Let me grab this budget. I'll tell you based on collections only. So in next year's budget, you looked at 12% would be 139,000, just over 139,000. And then the 2 collection line items are operating materials and subscription and memberships. So that gets to 181, just over 181. So we are above the 12% mark for collections alone.
Very good. I just wondered. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we have a collection management policy in place?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, if you look at our website, under About Us, you can see all of our policies that pertain to the public. We don't have our personnel manual up there, but everything that pertains to the public is there. And
Yeah, I just saw that it was board approved and I didn't
Mhm.
remember.
It was a long time ago.
Okay.
But I did just read it and I didn't see anything irrelevant in it.
Okay, cool.
Hasn't come up a lot of times. We've had a committee on challenging certain books and whatever, and we've been fortunate. We've had no book burners in the city, so it hasn't been an issue. So
Yeah, we
that's been good.
really,
Better knock wood, Don.
well, we never have. And to be honest with you, I let people know that when they want to come and talk to me about a book, which rarely happens. I'd say I've had maybe 2 or 3 conversations about a book in the time that I've worked here. And I say, I will bring this to the board if you want to. It'll be a first. It's never happened. The press will probably come. Everyone in junior high is going to read this book.
Sort of like a highlight. This one would be a good one to read, isn't it?
Right, yeah.
Banned in
Censorship
Boston.
censorship is a great way to promote materials, but is unethical. And I can talk to you about the First Amendment. And in all of them, like, I mean, and sometimes sometimes it's an accident. Like a woman pulled a book for a toddler that really belonged to the parent. And she pulled it from the parenting collection, but she thought the toddler pulled it. So then the toddler started looking at it, or she started reading it, and she was like, oh my gosh, this is, sex education and stuff. And it was like, well, it was in the parenting collection. So it was, once that was realized, it was fine. So sometimes it's just like a little misunderstanding. It's not, I have not had anybody who was like, no, I really want this book pulled. Knock on wood, as they said. But then we have a conversation. That's what we do. And they don't choose to pursue it. I find that, thinking about the First Amendment and freedom of speech, that freedom of speech issues come up far more with programs. People tend to protest drag queen story time in conservative towns. Also, right now, when you look at John A. Logan's response to the president's orders about censoring diversity programs, they immediately censored their diversity programs and said that they canceled basically not really stuff that was specifically about diversity training, which was what the order addressed. They canceled anything that was about people who are not white. So they canceled Hispanic Heritage Month. That is censorship. And the order was censorship. That's far more severe than an individual having a concern about an individual library book and whether it's appropriate for their child, for example, and whether or not we should extend that to whether it's appropriate to everyone's child. That's a fairly easy conversation to have. Once you're in the conversation, they go, oh, I didn't realize I just suggested censorship. So that's a far more serious thing. And then you could even go to the extent that, really the powers that be in terms of whether or not we have access to information lie far more with corporations these days than they do with the government, with the exception of, at least in recent years until this happened. That's really where the censorship issue is.
That's a difference of 6 miles and a century.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I might ask you a question, though. Years ago, we had issues about library access for the internet. And we all know there's lots of things on the internet that are not suitable for all public consumption. And I remember at the time when we talked about this, that there were cases out of Texas, for example, even in a city like Austin, which is pretty liberal, that staff members were complaining about offensive things that patrons were accessing and they're causing the employee to feel it was an uncomfortable environment to be in and whatever. Have we had any problem with computer usage where there's been an issue about that kind of thing?
Let me mute my phone. Hold on, it's very loud. Very sorry about that. So we do actually have a filter on our computer system. And it seems to filter out hardcore porn. I've never had trouble searching for information and not finding what I was looking for. And I've had very few people email in and say, because there's an opportunity to email the library's address, I think, if you do come across something that is censored. And it's always just hardcore porn. And so that actually goes against it's not that we don't want them to access whatever they want to access in here. It's that it's on display in here. So you cannot display something that would basically sexually harass someone else. So that's how I explain that when somebody, asks, they say, I'm a grown man, why can't, can't I access that? You can't access it in here, and that's the reason. I suppose if we wanted to create a little room or something, we could.
Back room.
Yeah, the back room, which no one wants to clean. So
oddly enough, that the Congress actually passed a law limiting funding for public libraries, that they had to have such filters,
right.
and as a condition of receipt, which kind of eliminated some of the American Library Association concerns over this because they wanted the money. But I'm just wondering if there's been any issue in the meantime.
We haven't. So that's E-rate, and we do get E-rate, and so we have to be SEPA compliant, which is that law. And so, but we already were SEPA compliant. I worked at Minneapolis Public, and right after I left Minneapolis Public, the librarians sued the library for not protecting them from sexual harassment. Because of how people were using the computers, because people would print things out to print out hardcore porn, so that when the librarian pulls it off the printer, she has to see it, and they can watch her face and see the consequence. So that is sexual harassment. So it's kind of one of those situations where the two different values come up against one another. But there are libraries, particularly more wealthy libraries, that can get by without applying for E-rate funding for their internet services. There are libraries that do not filter, that stick with that hard line. We do not filter, and they sometimes do have problems with their communities, particularly with like parents who have walked by a computer with their children and their children saw, or perhaps even just people who felt, adults who felt harassed by that or saw that as a potential problem. So there are libraries that do not filter do seem to have those issues, but we haven't had it. And initially when filters came out, when ALA, came out with, that policy, it was that, we weren't really sure. Filters were new, and people weren't really sure, like, well, if you search for, what does breast cancer look like? Am I going to be able to see, and actually it doesn't filter out that kind of stuff. We haven't seen it filter out, breast cancer information or anything like that. Or, information about being transgendered or that kind of stuff. We're not seeing a lot of that. I've never seen anybody not be able to access anything like that, or have never tried to access, when I'm experimenting on our filter, which I do occasionally, I've never found it blocking anything that shouldn't be blocked. So that's also not a huge issue. What does come up in Illinois, and will come occasionally to the Illinois Library Association, will be issues in which legislators want to force all libraries to filter. And that has so far, knock on wood, always lost, because ILA will always advocate for local control. Your local library gets to decide whether or not they want to filter and what's best for their community and how they want to manage that. So, so that's kind of it in a nutshell. Like, so we've not had a problem with
Are you ready to move on to the next chapter?
it. Let's see, what's the topic on chapter 8?
Member responsibilities and resource sharing.
We do a lot of that. We get so many calls for advice that Lynette thinks the library should pay us. So we are one of the libraries that other area libraries tend to reach out to, because we're a little bit bigger. So a lot of times we have faced weird things that they've never faced. So we do a lot in terms of resource sharing.
Have we covered it?
Yes.
Please show that we covered it then.
Okay.
Do we have anything else that we need to address here at this point?
That was chapter 8. What's chapter 9?
Public services.
Reference and readers.
Reference and readers advisory. And yeah. Okay, so we have a reference librarian. And we always have a librarian on staff too. There's like 1 hour a week where we're at lunch and there's no librarian here. So that is always available.
Is it our consensus we're good on that? I think we are.
I would say yes.
So, do we have anything else we need to address at this point, Diana?
Nope, I think that's it.
Any old business? Any new business? Any patron problems?
There have been a few, but I think we've dealt with it all. No, I think we did have a weird incident. We did have one person banned, and I guess we do need to probably just solidify that and say that continues until and unless. There was a patron who who had a meltdown outside in the Japanese garden, and they tossed the trash can. They picked the trash can and tossed it over, which we thought was bolted down. Parents just super heavy. So they picked it up and they threw it, and then they were throwing trash everywhere, and they were yelling at a park bench. And the police came. We called and they came and they delivered the ban notice, and then they argued with the guy for 2 hours until he picked up all the trash.
Oh no.
That's justice.
Yeah. So yeah.
Was this kind of a mental illness kind of thing?
It seems like it was. It must have been a mental illness. And we just thought it was funny that they didn't just deliver the ban notice and send him away, that they made him pick up all the trash. But he did pick up all the trash. So he is banned. So again, I guess I would say, all you really need is a motion and a second to to leave that as is until and unless further action. So like if that person came back or an advocate came back and said, hey, can we let that person back if they were off their meds or whatever, then that could be reconsidered by the board. So that's it for patron behavior.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion. It's Susan.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Is the trash can bolted down now?
Yes. Yes, Josh came in and said, I never thought I would say this, but the trash can is now bolted to the ground and protected from future attacks. So,
Perfect.
yeah.
It's amazing what you can learn by being a library board member.
Mhm.
Are you ready for the question? If so,
Yeah.
Harriet. Your vote.
What is the question?
We're going to allow this person to be banned until they come back and ask for
Yes,
a release.
yes.
Okay. I vote yes. Chastity,
Yes.
Joyce,
Yes.
Phil,
Yes.
Julian,
Yes.
Roland absent, Susan,
Yes.
and the thing about it is, Susan, Barbara,
Yes.
motion carries. Is there any other business that we need to address before adjournment? If not, thank you all for your patience today and good work.
All right.
Continue the
Great,
journey.
very good, very good.
Bye, everyone. See ya.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye, bye-bye.
Bye.